this is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services, and this video is coming to you as a special request, why RTOs fail. So I have been talking to a couple of providers recently, and we're working on a couple of startups at the moment, and we've been involved in a couple of different things, and one of my staff said to me that we really needed to do a video on, I guess, just some of the key reasons as to why RTOs fail. So we've been involved in RTO sales over this period of time. We've been involved in RTO closures. We've had people come to us and say, look, it's just too much for me. I want to shut the RTO down, or I want to sell, or, we've seen partnerships fail and things like that. So I just wanted to do a little bit of an episode on, I guess, some of the reasons why RTOs, I guess two things that we look at is one, why RTOs choose to kind of either sell up or exit from the market. And then secondly, why it is that RTOs fail, and probably focusing more on the failure side of it. So I guess the first thing, in relationship to like why we occasionally will see RTOs that are like selling or things like that, a lot of that generally has to do with general business processes. So, partnerships, a lot of smaller RTOs are held on partnerships, and, partnerships are just one of those areas of business. They're like any other business, that they really do rely on effective communication, on both partners being on the same page, on having really good and open and honest communication about what partner is doing what and things like that. So a lot of the times RTOs will actually choose to either sell up or change hands, purely because when two or three parties go into an agreement about how to run an RTO, there's not really a lot of discussion in relationship to who will do what and what the expectations are of each of the parties. So that's certainly something that I would be suggesting if you are looking at going and starting an RTO and you are doing it as a partnership, is understanding what each party is going to contribute, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each party, and really just having a plan in place for like when things go wrong. Very few RTO startups, very few RTO purchases go as they are planned. Often everything takes anywhere from like 2 to 20 times longer. So that can be in relationship to like addition to scopes that are required, interactions with regulators, interactions with funding bodies, ability to get funding contracts and things like that. All of that stuff often takes 10 times longer than you think it's going to. And that then creates a financial cost on the business during that time frame. So understanding what parties are going to be able to financially contribute and what parties are going to be able to contribute from an operational perspective is really important when you're going into something like that. Also just understanding that like government is government. And so, please don't expect to put in an application and then like have it back in even necessarily a month's time. So obviously many of you would have applied for Smart and Skilled. The expectation was that we were going to hear from Smart and Skilled in relationship to new providers in February. We're now in May. We're fully expecting it's going to be June, July before we actually find out who even got a funding contract. Once you get your funding contract, you've then got to actually go out, recruit, apply for the places, et cetera, et cetera. So everything does take like a lot longer than you think it's going to. It's not necessarily, there's generally no malice behind it whatsoever. It's just the government is just a very, very slow system. So you've just got to expect that there is never going to be a rush to get anything that you need done in a rush when it comes to government. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I try and encourage new RTOs that are looking at getting into the market to really understand, is like timeframes and how this works. I know, like even in my case, we've done projections and we've gone, okay, well, 2 years down the track, we're going to be here. And realistically, it's like 5 years down the track before you're going to be there. So it's important just to understand like that time frame process does take time. And obviously there's going to be a cost associated with that. One of the other things that I see constantly in RTOs is with a lot of these like pre-purchased or these kind of bolt-on setup where a consultant comes in, they set everything up for the RTO. There's not a lot of engagement on behalf of an RTO, is that you end up with a lot of owners, CEOs who legit have no idea how the business is supposed to run. So it is incredibly important if you are starting an RTO, if you are stepping into an RTO, if you purchase an RTO, if you become the CEO of an RTO, that you actually understand how things work. So you do need to understand your legal obligations, because you have legal obligations, but you also need to, like, very, very clearly, you need to understand how this business operates. RTOs are complex. They're not rocket science. Like, a lot of people act like they're just like, there's no way you can be compliant. Yes, you can 100% be compliant. There's no way you can be compliant and make a profit. Yes, you absolutely can be compliant and make a profit. But you need to understand that there is give and take on both of those sides. And that whenever your focus is on building the business, it's probably not going to, like, you need to spend a good amount of time focusing on the compliance of the business, and then you can go into like the building of the business sales side, and then you're going to need to switch back out into that compliance side. So it's really important to have good people within management who have focus in both of those areas, and who can also understand balance in both of those areas. Because if you've got two people who are really focused on sales, you're going to end up with a non-compliant RTO with a lot of enrollments, and then there's going to be a huge cost in actually going back and fixing it up. If you end up with two people who have got a really strong focus on building a compliant RTO, you never get enough students through the door to actually make a profit. So you've got to have both sides of those coins. Like when we look back, there was, the best partnerships. You had your Walt Disney, who was your person who had this brilliant idea and this concept, and then you had the brother that sat behind him that like then went and actually operationalized it all. So you need to have both of those sides of the coin. You need to have the sales side, the operational side, and the compliance side. And as a CEO, like if you're going to be the head of that organization, you need to understand all of those different components, and you need to be able to make decisions as to, like, before we go out and we do this big push for sales, we're actually going to make sure we've got a robust program that sits behind that. Okay. The biggest reason why I get called into RTOs at a time of intent to cancel, every time I've been called into an RTO that's an intent to cancel, it's generally there's generally two reasons behind it. The first reason is that the RTO owners engaged people that led them astray. That can be trainers, that can be consultants, things like that. But going hand in hand in that is also not understanding in themselves and not upskilling themselves enough to really have the knowledge to be able to call bullshit on your consultants. So never engage a consultant with the concept of having that person long-term direct your business. A consultant should come in, help you set up, help build your knowledge and capacity, and then regularly come back and support, helping you maintain your knowledge. But you need to be able to spar with your consultant in the same way that you would spar with an ASQA auditor. Okay. So when it comes to assessment tools, you need to be able to argue why your tools are compliant. So you need to be able to talk through a mapping guide. You need to be able to talk through your TAS. You need to be able to talk through your trainer matrix template. You need to be able to talk through your policies and procedures. If you as the CEO cannot do that, you're going to be in real trouble when it comes to audit. But not only that, if you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to effectively performance manage your staff. Okay. The most effective managers that I have seen in our business are effective because they know the jobs of their staff inside and out. So they can sit with admin, and admin can go, oh, but this is really hard because like we can't do this. And you'll sit there and you'll be like, whoa, 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 stop. Like, let's sit. What's the problem? Is that, is there an issue with entering the enrollment? What's the issue with the resulting? What's the issue with, coordinating the programs? Why aren't you reporting to me on the number of completions and the number of commencements and things like that? Like, you need to have an understanding of the job. Okay. So, and then you need to be able to do the same with your sales staff. You need to be able to talk to them about how they go about selling their programs. You need to be able to do the same with your trainers. You need to be able to understand that, okay, well, what's the challenge here? Like, are you following your training plan? Like, do you understand why it's important that you get this number of commencements and this number of completions each month? Like, what are the barriers to that? Are you actually, why aren't we getting attendance? And if the attendant, okay, well, why we're not getting attendance? Because going back, are we notifying the students of their classes? Are we following up with them when they don't attend? you need to understand that process from end to end as the CEO. Now, not necessarily like if you've got an owner and you've got a CEO in place, then that's your call. However, if you are the CEO and the RTO manager of a business, you need to be able to call BS and you need to understand each one of your staff's roles. And as I said, the best CEOs, the best operators that I have worked with, they can sit and talk to each one of those roles, and they feel very comfortable talking to their processes in front of an ASCO auditor. Every ASCO audit that I've been involved with in the last 6 months, where the RTO owner has been able to demonstrate that they understand how their RTO works, the way that ASCO interacts with that RTO is substantially different. The moment that the RTO ownership and management demonstrate that they don't know what's like, that they can't speak to their own policies and procedures, they can't speak to the RTO standards, they can't speak to the training packages, they can't speak to their policies and procedures, ASCO, that's when you start to get that combative ASCO perspective coming through. Because realistically, there is a concern from the regulator going, yeah, but I'm not paying Lauren to know how to run the RTO because Lauren's not running the RTO. You're running the RTO. And I constantly say this to my clients is that, you know, if you are running the RTO, you need to run the RTO. Like, I'll provide you with a set of policies and procedures. I'll provide you with some awesome compliant assessment tools. But at the end of the day, you need to know how to run your programs. You need to know all of those policies back to front. You need to be able to speak to them. You need to be able to explain them to your staff. You need to be able to performance manage your staff against those KPIs within those policies and procedures. You know, that's a day-to-day task, and you have to build your team around that. And again, the best operators that I've seen, they can sit with their teams and do that. And that generates so much more respect for how that RTO operates. Like, that is the difference between successful RTOs and non-successful RTOs, is that the owners and the CEOs that I work with, they know their stuff. They've done all the different roles within the RTO, you know, and they are worth every dollar that they get paid because they know their shit, you know, and they can sit with any one of their staff and they can explain why this policy needs to get put in place, and they can explain how to operationalize it. And that doesn't mean that they necessarily know all the ins and outs of like how to result a unit, although I strongly suggest that you should. But it does mean that when the staff say, well, why do I need to make sure that why do I have to get the certificate out now? Then you can turn around and you're like, well, because we've got a set of standards that we work to, and standards says that we've got to get that out within 28 days. And, you know, if that's, you know, if we're not managing that, then what's the reason why we're not managing that? Like, I need to understand that so that I can help you remove that roadblock. That's how you develop a knowledgeable RTO staff, and never hold back information from your staff in relationship to that. Like, you should always be helping build the knowledge and capacity of your staff in relationship to the RTO standards. That's why I put out all of these videos, is so that every level of the RTO can understand how this stuff works, why this stuff works. So, you know, when we start to withhold information from our staff, when we don't explain why, like when we never explain the why, we just say, no, this is what you have to do, and it's because I say so. That's often the reason why I start to see RTOs get into real trouble, because there's not that systematic educational building happening within the RTO. And ultimately, you are a registered training organization. If you are not capable of training your staff, that's a real concern. And constantly within RTOs that get shut down, the thing that I constantly see is that there is a withholding, and there is a lack of training, and there is a lack of wanting to actually see staff develop. And that can happen for a whole wide range of reasons, but it's never productive within an RTO. You are a training organization. You should have education at your heart, and that is what you should always be focused on 100%. So yeah, I guess that's just some of the reasons why we see RTOs fail. I guess probably the other big area that we constantly see RTOs fail in is generally in relationship to, you've got a really you've got lots of processes happening, but none of it's being documented. Like, from your RTO is going to get shut down perspective. That's what's going to happen is you're doing everything ad hoc. You're not doing things as per your policies because you don't have policies, and you may be doing everything, but you're not documenting any of it. So you're not documenting your industry engagement. You're not documenting your assessment properly and things like that. Obviously, assessment is where it starts to get worrisome from the regulator, because there's no evidence that you're actually providing assessment to your students and making sure that they're competent before you issue out their qualification. In that particular case, that's what's occurring, you're very, very likely to get into trouble. Okay, so if it comes to an audit and there's a difference between we're going to shut you down and we're going to give you an opportunity to rectify, it's going to boil down to, are you actually doing the assessment? If you're not doing the assessment, you don't deserve to operate as an RTO, so I have no sympathy for you in that case. If you are doing the assessment and you're not documenting it properly, it's a very expensive process. So if you're an RTO and you're buying off-the-shelf tools and then you're refusing to let your staff contextualize them, you're non-compliant. I'm telling you right now. Like, it's very clear in almost all of the off-the-shelf tools that get bought, bar Wires and a couple of other niche providers like automotive assessment tools. Off-the-shelf resources specifically state in their agreements that they have to be contextualized. So you are purchasing them, and then you need to have staff who know what they're doing, spend the time to contextualize them and add in the additional benchmarks and things like that. It takes 10 times more money and time to fix something after the fact than it would be if you just bit the bullet and bought something and built something proper off the starting gate. Okay, the amount of times I've seen RTOs that have literally had to spend millions to go back and fix stuff that would have cost them, it would have cost them $100,000 to put it right in the first place. Instead, they chose to roll it out and add on and add on and add on and add on, and then they've got to go back and fix everything. The amount of time that it takes for this, like the amount of time you waste on staff, the amount of time that you take your trainers away from training and have to put them into something else. It's this save a dime now, but it costs me a dollar later mentality that we see across so many RTOs. And I understand that RTOs, a lot of you guys, there's not a huge amount of money for small RTOs as you're starting up. Like, it takes an awful lot to actually start to get yourself to where you're really profitable. However, you need to really think about it. If you are not willing to invest to set it up correctly, you're fully going to screw yourself later on, because the cost of rectifying just costs so much more. Like, often I'll have clients and they'll go, well, just fix my current tools as they are. I'm like, by the time that I validate them, I identify what the gaps are, your trainer takes a stab at fixing them, I have to go through and validate that again. Rather than spending like that 40 hours to do all of that, like, let's just put in place a good tool to start with. And yeah, it might cost you an extra $1,000 now, but it's going to save you. You're going to end up spending more money than that later on to get it fixed, right? So you really, you should be able to speak to the quality of your tools. You should be able to go and validate a tool. Like, if you're an RTO owner, you should be able to validate a tool by yourself. And if you don't know how to do that, like, go and do a course with Mr. Wed. Come and watch like a bunch of our videos. Go and do a workshop with Vel. Go and do a workshop with Iteca. Go and do a workshop with Vivacity, or go and work with Vanessa from Validate. You should be able to speak to these things. There are so many resources in our industry to support your building of knowledge in that area. As I said, Velg, Iteca, Vivacity, Validate. There's like a bunch of good consultants that I would be more than happy. Like, if you don't want to work with me, that's no problems. Like, I know 10 really fantastic consultants, men and women, that I refer people to all the time because they know their shit. So, if you don't want to work with me, I'll refer you to someone by all means. Otherwise, come and work with us as well. But watch all of these videos. We've got hours and hours of resources. So educate yourselves first as the CEO. That is going to be the number one determination as to whether or not you're going to be successful. And you need to educate yourself, as I said, on compliance, on operations, and on sales. And you need to have that combination of those three things in order to operate effectively, probably in any sector, to be fair, but specifically in the RTO sector. So I hope you guys have found that helpful. it just kind of gives you guys, hopefully it gives you guys a little bit of background on like where to go to if you are thinking of starting up an RTO, if you're thinking of buying an RTO, or if you're currently running an RTO, but you're maybe not feeling 100% comfortable, that you've got all of the skills that you need to. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, smash the like button. We are dropping videos every Wednesday and Sunday. Hit the notifications button so you never miss an Anna Wire video. If you do want to support us, you can check out the memberships tab below, or you can just share this video and like this content. That's the biggest thing that you can do to support us as a provider. You can do that on LinkedIn, or you can do that on YouTube. We really, really appreciate all the feedback, love, and support that we do receive from you guys. And we are committed to continuing to provide lots of support and love and training and education in these videos. My name is Lauren Hollis for Anna Wire Education Services. Be good to your family, get out in the sunshine, and eat good food. Have a good day, guys.